We can't have unrestrained inflammation. If we have unrestrained inflammation that never stops, we would simply become one big scab, and that wouldn't be good. So we have to have, as part of our immune system, a way to not only turn it on, but also to turn it off. In one broad sense, we think that there's two different arms of the immune system, one of which is pro-inflammatory and one of which is regulatory or anti-inflammatory, and that a disruption in these two aspects of the immune system leads to what we think of as autoimmune diseases such as multiple sclerosis. So several of the different therapies that we have will try to take advantage of this distinction in the immune system as we think of it. One would be to simply suppress the significantly overactive immune system. And some of the older therapies and some of the high-dose immunoablation therapy with stem cell rescue, even some of the newer therapies, are based on this immunosuppressive approach. Some of the newer approaches might be really looking at more of a fluctuation between the pro-inflammatory side and the regulatory side, with trying to shift to have more of a regulatory component involved as opposed to the more pro-inflammatory approach. So this balance between the pro-inflammatory and the regulatory or anti-inflammatory aspects of the immune system might be thought of as a yin-yang. For every response, there's another response, or even as a seesaw where something might go up and there's a regulatory aspect that will bring it back down so that the immune system stays balanced over time.
Many leaders in the multiple sclerosis field today feel that for the foreseeable future, the management of multiple sclerosis will involve using multiple different medications. This is based somewhat on the model that we use for cancers, where a person may have several different chemotherapy treatments.
There are a variety of combination therapies being studied right now. So the largest one is sponsored by the NIH, something called COMBRX, comparing glatiramer acetate to interferon beta-1a to a combination of the two together. The concept being that using two drugs with different mechanisms of action might together be better than either one alone.
There are currently 6 medications on the market. They are effective and generally safe, but all are given by injection, which is inconvenient, and most patients dislike injections. So one of the exciting developments is that there now are a number of potentially oral therapies on the horizon.
Obviously, from a quality of life and practicality and ease issue, taking a pill at home at whatever time you have set out is certainly a very attractive treatment.
In the Seattle meeting of the American Academy of Neurology this year, we heard 2 presentations about oral treatments. Both those presentations contained positive results of oral treatments, and both suggested to me that oral therapies will be with us in the not too distant future.
But of course you have to determine whether or not that oral medication is as effective as one of the current therapies, and that is the challenge, because even though oral might be attractive and certainly user-friendly, you want to make sure that it's as effective as what we currently have. And that's why you need to do clinical trials and testing.
When are pills coming? Well, pills are coming. As well, other drugs are being developed that will be administered intravenously, but not every day or every week, but maybe once every 6 months, for example, or once or twice every 6 months. So what's in the pipeline are oral agents or intravenous agents that are only administered rarely.
85% of MS patients start out with a relapsing form of the disease. So when you looked at the development of treatments, the obvious to focus on was relapsing MS, and that's exactly what was done. However, that leaves us progressive MS. And right now, for true progressive MS, I don't think we have any established treatment. That is a real lack at the current time that people are very aware of. Now there's increasing interest in turning to the puzzle of progressive MS and trying to figure out an effective treatment for that form of MS, because that is the true disabling form.
We don't really understand completely what is the mechanism that triggers disease progression. Is it the loss of the axon, the loss of myelin? So the research and the strategy that is going on now to try and understand the axonal loss in MS, and developing therapies in neuroprotection and repair will certainly help us try and develop therapies to stop progression.
There are trials underway for patients with progressive MS. There are a number of different types of agents. One of them is an immune-modifying drug, which makes its way into the central nervous system and may have beneficial effects while there. Another series of drugs are what we call channel blockers, and these drugs act in a fashion such that they tend to protect neurons from inflammation-induced damage. So we're hopeful that they will work. In England, there's a trial of a cannabis-derived drug, and the hope there that this drug will slow down the disease as well.
And there's great hope in the clinical trials that were reported recently in a neurology meeting that some of these drugs actually do impact progression, and that's terrific news. In multiple sclerosis, we know it to be an inflammatory disease and a neurodegenerative disease. And neurodegeneration is the loss of the axon. And so when we talk about neuroprotection, we're talking about protecting the axon. And one of the ways, of course, is to replace the myelin that's been lost. So there are many different types of strategies. One of the ways is find drugs, what are called neuroprotective drugs, which actually protects the signal along the axons. And there's actually some clinical trials that are underway going along those ways. Another strategy is using what we call growth factors. Growth factors are in our system to provide nutrients to cells and other compounds in our body. And the axon also needs growth factors, a tropic support to allow the axon to survive without being degenerative. And the third way is what we call cell-based therapies.
All the tissues of the body have primitive cells whose job it is to resupply the cells of the tissue. Those are the so-called stem cells. So for example, if one sustains a cut in their skin, cells of the skin have to repair the damage. We now realize that all the tissues of the body have stem cells, including the nervous system. Stem cells are being evaluated in several different ways. One approach is so-called bone marrow transplant. In general, that approach involves very potent chemotherapy to wipe out the immune system and then restoring it by a bone marrow transplant with the hope that the new immune system that grows will function normally. The other aspect of stem cells about which people are very excited is the potential ability of stem cells to repair damage. Even after we've effectively stopped the inflammation in multiple sclerosis, stopped the ongoing damage, we need to repair the damage that's already there, and the hope is that stem cells may be able to accomplish that.
But the challenges there, of course, are multiple. You know, what cells do you use? You have to make sure whatever cells you use become the cells you want them to be. You don't want, obviously, a cell that makes a muscle tissue or heart muscle in your brain. So you have to make sure you're using a cell that will make myelin. It was often thought when myelin was lost and destroyed, that was the end of the story, that there wasn't anything that could be done to repair myelin. And I really suspect that in the next 3-5 years, we're going to see clinical trials that are going to make a difference, that are going to restore some of the function loss and stop the disability from taking place.